Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, it's the Journalist Roundtable. We'll take a look at the week's top stories, including Governor Katie Hobbs' pick for Lieutenant Governor. The Journalist Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your public television station.
Good evening. Welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Rick DeBrule, sitting in for Ted Simons. It's Friday, and that means it's time for the Journalist Roundtable. So joining us tonight, Jeremy Duda of Axios Phoenix, Mark Brody from KJZZ Radio, and Howie Fisher of the Capital Media Services. Gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. Greatly appreciate it. We're going to start off by talking about something that seemed like it happened a long time ago, but it's still relevant, and that's the fact that Katie Hobbs, our governor, now has a running mate for her to be the lieutenant governor. But before we talk about who that is and why do we have a lieutenant governor? Where the heck, I mean, for all of us who've been in Arizona forever, we never had one of these things before.
Well, you have to remember the long history in this in terms of we've had governors who have been indicted and removed from office, a la Fife Simons. We have been governors who have been impeached and removed from office, a la Eb Meekum. We've had governors like Wes Boland who died in office. We had a governor like Janet Napolitano who simply said, I'm tired of this, I'm going to go work for Obama. And sometimes what happens, in the case of Napolitano, is the person who replaces them in the old law was the Secretary of State, who is elected independently.
But by the way, we should point out that once upon a time, Bruce Babbitt became governor, and he wasn't even Secretary of State because they had to go down to the next position, Attorney General.
And so you've got a situation where you think you've elected a Democrat, a la Napolitano, and all of a sudden, Jan Brewer's governor. Hey, wait, how did that happen? And so they finally concluded, why don't we have running mates, a ticket, the same way as you elect the president and vice president, that next in order. It took a long time to convince people because they said, we're going to create yet another position in state government. Why would we want to do that? So they've set up this position. You have to announce your running mate, as the governor just did, as Andy Biggs just did. And they will serve as head of some agency to be determined by the governor.
I was going to say, Mark, what is the job of the lieutenant governor besides being the person standing by in case something happens to the real governor?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's undetermined. We've never done it before, to Howie's point. So,
but isn't in the law there is some information that says, oh, they're going to other than being the next breathing person?
So they can be the chief of staff for the governor. They can be the head of the Department of Administration. They can be the head of another state agency, or they can be basically anything the governor can appoint somebody to, they can appoint the lieutenant governor to. So I think to Howie's point of not creating a wholly new job in state government, the lieutenant governor will do something that somebody is already doing, but it probably depends. I would assume that there were some conversations between the top of the ticket, the gubernatorial candidate, and the lieutenant governor pick about, what kinds of things maybe would you potentially like to do if we win? And it probably depends on which one of them wins, depending on if Sina Kerr wants to do one thing and John Giles wants to do something else.
So, Jeremy, to the point that Howie just made, the goal was to make sure that lieutenant governor was of the same party affiliation as the governor. And
theory,
what
yes.
seemed to have happened this week is our governor has named somebody who is not of the same. Explain what happened, who it is, and explain what happened.
Well, right now the job of the running mate is to help the top of the ticket, the governor candidate, get elected. And that's what Katie Hobbs was looking at when she picked former Mesa Mayor John Giles, who a lifelong Republican who had, in the last decade or so, had turned further and further away from his party in the Trump era, endorsed Kamala Harris, I think she spoke at the Democratic National Convention even. And he decided a few months ago that the lifelong Republican moniker, he was done with that. He switched to independent. So it'd be kind of tough for, I think, Democrats to swallow Katie Hobbs running with a Republican running mate. Independent running mate, maybe not so tough to stomach. And what she is hoping is that John Giles will appeal to some of these other disaffected Republicans who just can't stomach Trump, or center-right independents who don't like the MAGA movement, folks who might maybe stay home and not vote at all. That he can appeal to some of those folks, bring them into the fold. It's going to be a tight race. And from that perspective, it's probably a pretty good pick because, I mean, much like vice president, the effect is going to be marginal. Most of these folks are just not going to have a huge effect. Like Sina Kerr, was a very well respected.
Who Sina Kerr is, because she's kind of been forgotten this past week.
Former Republican state senator from the West Valley. I think pretty well respected. Andy Biggs chose her, I think, last week. seems pretty acceptable to pretty much all factions in the Republican Party, and it's difficult to imagine that even a single vote will be swayed by this. I mean, I think the first rule...
You mean by either choice?
I think by seeing occur. I mean, it's hard to imagine if you're on the fence about who to vote for or whether to vote at all. Most people aren't even going to know the names of these folks, probably, except it's on the ballot. But John Giles has kind of a unique appeal that Hobbs is hoping to at least bring in some votes, and he possibly could.
And let's talk about that, because on a national level, when they're picking a vice presidential candidate, oftentimes it's, well, I'm a Northeast guy. Let's pick somebody from Texas. Let's pick somebody from California that can bring that. You know, Giles is from Mesa, from the East Valley. Can he bring those votes with him?
Well, he's that, plus he's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints, and that helps, I think, with certain constituencies, although, you know, harder to say whether that brings in a block. Part of the problem is we know about Sina Kerr. She has a voting record. Andy Biggs has a voting record. This governor has a voting record both as a state senator and as governor in terms of what she's signed and vetoed. At this point, John Giles is sort of a cipher. And we've all been waiting to actually...
He was mayor of Mesa. I mean, we know what his stances were there.
Well, yeah, his stances were, let's get the streets paved and let's do civic things. But, you know, what does he believe? For example, he said in 2024, he told NPR, I am pro-life. He also said more recently, I voted for Prop 139, which is the constitutional right to abortion. So which is it? Or is he just somebody that's sort of there to look good? He's an attorney, he's good looking, he's independent, and Katie's just counting on the fact that she's going to have a difficult time getting reelected, and maybe, you know, this is a Hail Mary for her.
Mark, we know that Katie Hobbs a while back said she wasn't going to be debating Andy Biggs. What about John Giles and Sina Kerr?
Same thing. He will not be debating Sina Kerr either. The governor's campaign is saying, we think that meeting voters face to face is a more effective option than debates. I mean, one could argue you could do both. I mean, you could debate and then you could go meet with voters, you know, face to face. But no, she's not doing the governor's debate. He will not be doing the lieutenant governor's debate.
Oh, but again, this comes down to she's ultra careful. This is a woman who, in her announcements, went to the morning news crews on TV stations, not the people who cover politics, to introduce him. You know, this is a woman who essentially has tried to avoid anybody who will ask her tough questions. She'll go on the afternoon KTAR shows, you know, with Bruce and Gatos. She will not do Broomhead. And so she's not good on her feet. She never has been good on her feet. She has gotten better, but she does not like being confronted. And she thinks that if I avoid debate, nobody's going to confront me on my record.
Jeremy, let's talk about the bigger question, which is, how is this being received? Because I have a feeling that if this had happened on the Republican side, there'd be pitchforks and hay bales and things on fire. How are the Democrats taking this?
I have not really heard any complaints, and I think it's kind of surprising because, you know, as you said, I mean, on the Republican side, this
because
would be
if something happens to Katie Hobbs,
we'd be able to hear the screaming from outside this building around. People would be incredibly angry. And I mean, I'm sure there are Republicans or Democrats who are privately, you know, not happy about the fact that a Republican turned independent is going to be the running mate. That this is a good opportunity to raise the profile of another Democrat. But I think here in Arizona, and this is maybe changing a little bit, but Democrats have always been kind of good at falling into line out here because they've been in the minority for so long. I think there's been a sentiment of like, hey, for the Democrats, that, hey, we have to take what we can get. I mean, they're lucky to have a governor. I mean, she won by 17,000 votes 4 years ago. That veto stamp is incredibly important to them. They've stopped, Hobbs has stopped a lot of stuff that Democrats don't want to see passed into law. And so
they're more concerned about re-election than they are on the name.
I mean, whatever concerns some Democrats may have, there's probably more of a sense of like, okay, don't rock the boat, don't make Katie Hobbs look bad. We need to get her elected because they want that veto.
And there's no fear by the Democrats that suddenly John Giles, when Katie's term is up in 4 years, assuming she gets reelected, that he's suddenly going to run for governor on that. So he's safe pick, assuming she's not called away to Washington for something. He's a safe pick.
All right, it's because elections are now a 12-month a year, every single year, year after year topic. We have the propositions to talk about. Now, normally this is the kind of season when we wouldn't be talking about the propositions very much, but we have so many that end up in court, and we have two in particular that we need to talk about, both dealing with education.
Yeah, so there's one prop. I'm still so bad with the number.
212.
212. That is the public school teachers measure trying to rein in ESAs a little bit.
I don't want to say the word voucher, the school empowerment accounts.
Right, empowerment scholarship account. What's in a name when it comes to vouchers, right? And so the sides were in court this week trying to figure out like which signatures are valid, which circulators were allowed and eligible to be circulating petitions. There hasn't been a final ruling on that, but Howie's got his notes out. There's also some...
But there's two other pieces of litigation in it. One, to your point, there's a lawsuit against Adrian Fontes because he used the word voucher.
Right, so you got suits on both sides of 212.
He's used the word voucher. He said empowerment scholarship account, but he also recognizes that since we've had this ASA program since 2011, folks have referred to them as vouchers. Is there a technical difference in terms of how the money is processed? Yes. So that becomes an issue. We've also got another lawsuit.
And real briefly, before you go on, there was a judge that made a ruling about that this week, correct?
Yeah.
On the vouchers issue.
On the voucher word.
The voucher word, which I believe they okayed that. That's not even the only language or lawsuit on how this is being described in the ballot, because there was also a lawsuit where Adrian Fontes lost, the other side lost, on how it's being described. I think it's in the publicity pamphlet.
Well, the publicity pamphlet, so you've got two things. The Secretary of State makes a title for the ballots and says, here's the yes and no. And that's where Adrian does that as Secretary of State. And they said he could use the word voucher. There's another lawsuit, the Legislative Council, which is a bunch of lawmakers, happens to be controlled by the Republicans, came up with a publicity pamphlet on what they said it does. And among the things they said is if you pass this, the people who are pushing these vouchers can go after you personally. And what the court said is, no, that isn't what the Supreme Court said just yesterday. They said, no, that's not what it says, and they slapped down the Legislative Council. So everybody's arguing over every tiny little bit of this.
And trying to keep track of this is a nightmare.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're a voter, now granted, you don't have to vote right now. We'll get to wait until these things pop out. But I mean, how do you keep track of all this?
Well, first you got to wait and see what actually makes it onto the ballot, which is also another big part of this litigation. In addition to the signatures for the Protect Education Act that Mark referenced, there's also Proposition 145, which is what the legislature passed ostensibly to protect military families, to stop the Protect Education Act or any future law from sweeping the voucher money. If you unused voucher money, you can bank that for future use, even for college tuition.
But it had two sides.
But there's also
and it was also, came out of the legislature at the last minute.
Yeah, there's also another part that says, hey, any law that includes a sweep of the voucher money for military families, the entire law is gone. Doesn't matter what else is in that. And they really tried to downplay that, but it was really a sneaky way to kind of get folks to vote for military families while also voting to completely scrap the Protect Education Act. Because if both pass, then the Protect Education Act is toast, no matter how many votes you get. And the courts have said, you can't put those two things together in the same ballot. It's obviously meant to kind of deceive folks. That's being appealed to the Arizona Supreme Court, so we're still waiting for the final word on that.
Mark, I guess the thing to think about here is we're getting to the end of this process. I mean,
are we?
I mean, in terms of what has to be in place for the ballots to be put together for the election. They don't have months and months and months to keep battling.
No, I mean, there are certainly printing deadlines that are coming up that the counties need to know what's going to be on the ballot, and to the point of Governor Hobbs picking her running mate, who is going to be on the ballot. So, yeah, I mean, we should know in the next several weeks what's actually going to be on the ballot. But a number of these still there's still active litigation that has to be resolved.
But actually, Maricopa County has told the Supreme Court next Thursday is when we need this done. And so, for example, the issue of Prop 212, and we're going to have a judge decide probably Tuesday are enough signatures. Somebody's going to appeal to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court will issue some summary judgment and say, we'll explain our logic later. Supreme Court is well aware of the deadline to start printing the ballot. Now, the brochure, which is a thing that goes to all 4.3 million registered voters, has a slightly different deadline. But in terms of knowing what's going to be on the ballot, if we don't know, when we or someone else is sitting around this table a week from now, we're in real trouble.
All right. Let's talk about another thing that hopefully will not end up in court, and that's the fact that the Senate President Warren Peterson said he and his group are not going to sue about redistricting in Arizona. So briefly, Jeremy, explain why were they considering it and why aren't they going to do it?
Well, earlier this year, the U.S. Supreme Court issued this landmark ruling on racially gerrymandered race-based districts, originally created to comply with the Voting Rights Act from the 60s. You'd have majority black districts, majority Latino districts, which generally ended up as always Democratic districts. Supreme Court said you can't base districts on race or ethnicity, and that affected maps in a lot of other states. You saw a Republican rush in a lot of states to start change up their congressional maps. Out here we have an independent redistricting commission, and Senate President Peterson said, hey, maybe I ought to sue over our maps here and see if we can get some extra Republican seats out of that. Now, there's only two majority Latino districts on the congressional map, both, of course, represented by Democrats. Peterson came out this week and said, we're not going to be doing that. Turns out, the commissioners think the maps would end up pretty much the same, which, I think kind of gets to the problem is, these other states, they're controlled by the legislature.
The redistricting process.
Whoever controls the legislature is intentionally wringing as many seats out of those maps as they can for their own party. Here you don't have. Here it's not the same. The Independent Redistricting Commission is not supposed to be taking, party affiliation.
Which has two Republicans, two Democrats, and an independent, which may lean one way or the other.
You have the two Democratic Latino districts, which I think will mostly look the same. One of them, here in the Phoenix area, Yasmin Ansari's seat, very compact, covers a very small contiguous area, likely to remain the same. And I think there's a peril here for the Republicans if they want to try and change the maps, because if someone wanted to try and get more Democratic advantage there, you could look at those two majority Latino districts and say, hey, we can take some Democrats out of these districts and it'll still be represented by Democrats, and start moving them into Juan Ciscomani's district or David Schweikert's district.
Be careful
and
what
make
you
them a
wish
little
for.
bit better
But
for Democrats.
in fact, that did occur. The last time they literally moved a line into a trailer park in Flagstaff so Wendy Rogers could run in the district she wanted. So even with the Independent Redistricting Commission in their nonpartisan nature, those games get played now, and it's a gamble. If you reopen it, assuming you can legally even do that, because I think this is all voter protected, if you were to reopen it, I think you're in real trouble, because you may not like what comes out the other end.
That's the real issue, because this obviously hasn't been tested legally. So to Howie's point, who knows if a court, ultimately probably the state Supreme Court, would say, oh, sure, you can force the redistricting commission to redo this, and then you have the question of what would the new lines look like. There are a lot of variables.
And it goes back to, you can sue over anything, and you may or may not get a decision. So it's a long way between that and what actually pops out.
That would take years to play out in the courts anyway. So we'll get to the next redistricting before that wraps up.
Well, more court stuff this week dealing with Ralph Heap, who's running for Corporation Commissioner, and explain what the issue has been, because he's been tied up for a while, and it looks like now the logjam is going to allow him to move forward with getting money from public funding for his election.
Yeah, this isn't a court issue. This hadn't gone to court yet. If the commission had ruled the other way today, I think we probably almost certainly would be. But,
so the background, explain what happened.
Ralph Heap, state legislator, one of the Republican nominees for Corporation Commission. He's a clean elections candidate, which means you don't accept private funding. You collect a $5 qualifying contributions. You get a lump sum of money for your campaign in the primary, then the general. We're in the general right now. Ralph Heap hasn't gotten his money because you have to sign an affidavit attesting to the accuracy of your campaign finance reports, and those reports may have a problem in it, that he had signs all over town, all over the state, and the reports didn't say who paid for them. So the commission said, we're not giving you your money until you sign this affidavit. He finally signed it. The commission's executive director, Tom Collins, said, hey, your reports are still inaccurate, though, because they got an affidavit from the sign shop saying, hey, we gave them to him on credit. The commission's executive director said, you're not allowed to do that, and it's still supposed to be reported on your campaign finance reports, and he recommended they continue withholding the money. They had a long meeting today. A lot of people spoke for and against him, and at the end of the day, but despite the Tom Collins recommendation.
Well, they actually had two votes,
Two
correct?
votes, yeah. Despite Tom Collins' recommendation that he still not get his money, the commission voted 3-1, give him his money so we can finally.
We're talking hundreds of thousands, like 350,000 or so?
Yeah, between the primary and general, because he hasn't gotten his primary money yet either, which which would have been used to pay for those signs if he'd had it. Yes, and you mentioned a separate vote, which is to find reasonable cause that he had violated clean elections rules or campaign finance laws, and they're going to do an investigation. But right now, the bottom line is Ralph Heap gets his money, which probably saves his campaign, because we're only 7 weeks away from the start of the
So on the one hand, they said, you broke the rules, but on the other hand, they said, but here's the money anyway.
So what we're going to investigate if you broke the rules.
And that's the funny part, because certain violations of campaign finance laws actually can result in you being removed from office. And so there's a possibility that because he's a Republican, this is a moderate Republican state, leaving aside the independents, he could get elected to the commission. Then the office would be declared vacant if, in fact, he's convicted, which actually gives Governor Katie Hobbs the power to name a replacement. Now, that
Unless she's not there, and then it would be her lieutenant governor.
Well, okay, or maybe it could be Governor Biggs. But the question, it has to be a Republican. But if it's Katie, she's not going to name a strong Republican. She's going to name more moderate Republican. This happened years ago with Chris Mays. Chris Mays at the time was a Republican. She was appointed by Janet Napolitano to fill a vacancy by a Republican lawmaker. And we've seen how Ms. Mays has said, sort of like, like John Giles, I'm not really a Republican anymore.
Mark, is this just massive inside baseball? Is this the kind of thing people, I went to my first trip to Buc-ee's last night. Things are cranking out there. Do you think anybody in Buc-ee's cares about this at all?
I would be pretty surprised. I mean, first of all, it's super complicated. I mean, Jeremy did a very good job explaining it, but it's really, really a complicated financial, clean elections rules. I'm not sure that this is top of mind. I'm assuming he's not going to be talking about it, on the campaign trail. So, yeah, I mean, it's a down ballot race. It's kind of the CorpCom is an important group. But I feel like every 2 years, people talk, it's the most important, agency you've never heard of. And still people are saying it's the most important agency you've never heard of. So I suspect that this is not going to be top of mind unless there's some finding that he violated rules and maybe he's disqualified from serving. That would probably get people's attention.
Yeah,
sure. This won't matter to most voters, but what will matter is if he doesn't get the money, then he doesn't have the ability to really reach out to these voters, and the folks who are casting ballots really have no idea who he is. So that's where it matters to voters in ways that they won't really realize, because now he has the money to send out flyers, to put up signs, to do digital outreach, stuff like that.
You mean pay off the sign guy?
Pay off the sign first and foremost. Pay off the sign guy.
All right, gentlemen. Unfortunately, we are out of time today. We greatly appreciate the fact that you're being here. Mark, thanks for being here. Howie, as always, a pleasure to see your bright and smiling face. And of course, Jeremy, thank you so much for being here as well. That'll do it for this edition on Friday of Arizona Horizon. Of course, Ted Simons, we hope, will be back on Monday. I'm Rick DeBrule, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Hello, I'm Alice Ferris, and we hope you enjoyed Arizona Horizon. For more than 40